Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, saying that financial is not a set forgiveness. Hey there. Welcome to the Radical Godly Stewardship Podcast. Yes, this is the place where heaven's economy collides with earth's assignments. I am your host, Dr. Lexi Johnson, your financial fire starter, your kingdom disruptor, your accountability coach into obedience, because around here, we do not beg God for money. No, we don't. We align, we obey, we produce, we multiply, we dominate. And if you're ready to steward well and think boldly and build kingdom wealth, then you are in the right place. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is episode 59, episode number 59. I am so glad you're here. Do me a favor, whether you're here live or whether you're watching the replay, drop a little note. Let us know that you're here. We always love to acknowledge those who take the time out of their day to join us. And today we're going to be talking about something that you are feeling, not just reading. Okay. We're going to be talking about something you're feeling, not stuff that you're just reading about, right? Prices are up. Paychecks feel tighter. Companies are no longer absorbing costs. They are passing them directly to you. And this is not a future problem, okay? This is a right now problem. So today we're going to unpack that. Today we're talking about tariffs and why they're finally hitting your wallet. Today we're talking about the truth behind the 2.7% inflation narrative that's been going on. And we're going to talk about the concerning signals that are coming out of the jobs market. And finally, we're going to talk about how kingdom citizens should respond without fear, without panic, right? Or not be passive about it either. Okay. So once again, welcome. Hello, Lady Doreen. Good to see you. Shalom as well. Thank you for those greetings from Kenya. So today, before we go any further, of course, we like to do our stewardship check-in. And this is the segment for those of you who are new. This is a segment before we get into our topics for the day where we just kind of ask ourselves some questions. The questions are usually related to the topic of the day or topics of the day, but we ask ourselves some questions to see how we're stewarding in these areas. Okay. So question number 1, have you noticed prices creeping up again? Have you noticed prices creeping up again? Right? I know I have. Okay. Are you feeling pressure at the grocery store or online or in your monthly bills? Are you assuming that this is temporary, or are you preparing for this to persist? Right? Because kingdom stewardship is not in denial. Okay. We can't be hiding out under a rock. We can't be like, oh, that's the news. I ain't gonna pay, too much attention to it. We don't pay attention to it, and we do. Okay. And we'll be talking about exactly what you should be paying attention to. So kingdom stewardship is not denial, right? We need to make sure that we are operating with a lot of discernment, okay, in this season and in this era. Now, we are just coming off of a 14-day fast. So I want to thank all of you that joined us for the 14-day Unshakable Peace fast. And it was absolutely amazing. So many testimonies from the participants about how much more they are at peace now in terms of their finances, not because some big old, miracles, which y'all would call miracles, and money raining down from heaven. No, not because of that, but because of now they have things in the proper perspective and how that has given them immense peace, right? And now they are even more discerning about a lot of the things that are going on that affect our wallets. So if you didn't join us, man, you missed a time. But I am working on putting all what we did together over those 14 days into a nice little, um, package where you can go through it yourself at any point during this year. So when I am making that, when I make that available, I will let you know. All right. Okay, let's get to our topics for the day. I want to first start with tariffs, right? Tariffs in your pocket, tariffs in my pocket. So let's start with tariffs. So for months, companies have tried to absorb tariff costs to stay competitive. Okay, so that's why initially we haven't really felt um, the impact of tariffs, but that phase has come to an end, y'all. What we are now seeing is that manufacturers are paying more for imported materials. Retailers are paying more for finished goods. Transportation costs are increasing. And so now these costs are being passed directly to who? To us, okay? To us as the consumers. And this is why prices are rising again, even when inflation is supposedly cooling down, right? It's interesting. You listen to the news and they're talking about, well, inflation is down, but why do I still feel, pressed, right? And we're going to talk about inflation in a minute. But tariffs, they're not just some theoretical cost in the sky, and we are getting ready to see that reality, like it's happening already. Okay, they are embedded costs, and once embedded, they rarely come back down. And this is only the beginning of that. This is not the peak. Okay. Hey, Amanda, good afternoon to you. So I want to share with you this story on tariffs. And then we're going to break that down even more about how this is going to affect us and our pockets. Now, there was this lady, her name's Miss O'Connell. She had purchased a special edition Barbie dressed in a professional women's hockey league jersey, right? And the Tim Hortons logo. And this was only available in Canada. Now, before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to my mom because she is the one who told me about this story a bit ago. So I went and did some research on it. And I'm like, this is going to be good to bring to the attention of the people. So shout out to you, Mom. So, anyway, she was purchasing this very special edition doll that was only available in Canada. She didn't live in Canada. Okay. She lives here. Um, uh, I believe she lives here in the US. So when she received the doll, when the doll was delivered, she was then issued a bill for $800. She was given a bill for $800. Okay. No, and this wasn't like delivery. This wasn't, now, mind you, let me tell you something. The doll was, I believe, $30. Okay. That was the cost of the doll, $30. But then she got this $800 bill for a tariff. Okay. So how did this end up happening? Well, there was an inflated valuation, right, on the doll. So in customs, when people are shipping internationally, businesses, whomever, whatever, are shipping internationally, they have to write down what they believe the value of the doll is. Okay. So the doll's value was listed as $3,000 CAD. Okay. That means Canadian money. That would be roughly $2,100 in the United States. Okay. That's the, what do you call it? Y'all know what I'm saying. That's the conversion. There we go. That is the conversion. Okay. So the doll was listed as 3,000 CAD, meaning roughly 2,100 USD. So instead of the doll, now the doll was supposed to have been listed as $30. Okay. So there was an error that was made. It was a clerical mistake that occurred, okay, when her cousin in Nova Scotia shipped the package via FedEx. So the customs paperwork was saying $3,000. It should have said $30. And so what happens when the doll was delivered, she was now issued this bill that said, hey, you owe $802 for tariffs. Okay. It actually was $742 in duties plus service fees. Okay. And that brought it to $802. Well, of course, they did the research and all of that. They found out that it wasn't an error, that it was an error, and that she, should not have been paying $800. However, there was still a tariff, right, that needed to be paid. Obviously, it was much, much smaller. But the truth of the matter is, the point of this is that this type of stuff is happening. Okay. And I'm not saying your tariff will be $800, but I'm saying when you begin when you're purchasing now internationally, and you're either purchasing or shipping or whatever internationally, we have to pay attention to these things. As of January 2026, the traditional $800 de minimis exemption has been eliminated. Okay, for almost all commercial imports that are entering into the United States. Okay. Now, this follows a lot of, executive actions that were taken in 2025, right? And new rules now require that there are duties even on low value goods that were previously duty free. All right. So, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? What does this mean for us? Let me break this down so that we can understand it, right? What this means is there are going to be built-in tariffs now for major international platforms. If you purchase from Shein or Temu, right? These places have raised their base prices to cover the new 10% to 50% tariffs that used to be waived. Okay, so for those of us who love to purchase from these international places, because the stuff is usually a whole lot cheaper. Okay. Those prices are going up. They're still not going to be as high as what we would pay for things here in the US, but you're definitely going to be paying more because they are passing that cost on to you. Others of us may notice new processing fees or import surcharges added at the final checkout screen that didn't exist a year ago. Okay. So, we got to watch out for these things, right? Here's what else you're going to experience because of tariffs. You're going to experience shipping delays, okay? Because there are going to be increased inspections. So previously, small packages under $800 were often waived, okay? That was that de minimis rule, $800 de minimis rule that I said is now eliminated. Small packages under 800 were often waived through customs, right? They had minimal oversight, but now every single package has to be formally processed and inspected to ensure that the correct duty is paid. So this is going to create and has created massive backlog at ports and sorting facilities. So again, if you are someone who purchases overseas quite a bit or internationally quite a bit, you need to be very aware of this, okay? Need to be very aware of this. Now, listen, the president of this here country, the United States, knew what he was doing when he put these tariffs in place, right? Because one of the goals outside of making money, okay, off of the other countries, but one of the goals is to push people to purchase within the US, right? That's one of the goals. Now, we're not here to talk about all the goals of tariffs right now today. I'm just talking about how it affects your wallet practically. Okay. So there's going to be increased inspections, which will cause shipping delays. There will also be delays because of postal services, right? So many foreign postal services, such as those in like Japan or Australia or different parts of Europe, they have temporarily paused shipments to the US. Why? Because because they lack the electronic systems that are needed to handle the new customs requirements. Okay, so now they have to go and kind of overhaul their systems so that it meets the requirements. So again, if you're ordering things internationally, expect delays. Okay, expect delays. What can you also expect? Well, you can expect some surprise bills at the door, just like the lady who bought the $30 doll. Thank goodness it was a clerical error, but she still had a duty. Well, she actually didn't end up with one, right? Because if it's under $100, then it's cool. So, but you can expect cash on delivery charges. So if you don't prepay the tariffs, okay, as earlier as I was saying that, like sites on Shein or Temu, you're going to start seeing, extra service fees for that. But if if they don't have those service fees in there, you don't pay them up front, then when um your courier, whether it's FedEx or UPS or DHL, when they show up with your package, they're going to ask you to pay the tax. Okay, cash on delivery, COD. And that is an additional service fee before they actually hand over your package. Okay, so please be very mindful of these things. Administrative fees. So, again, just like the $800 doll tariff, which again was an error, um, these small clerical errors on customs forms are now triggering actual bills rather than just being overlooked. In the past, it would have just been overlooked, right? But now, any kind of clerical error is going to trigger a bill. So, consumers are going to have to be much more careful about how items are valued by the sender. We have to be, looking at everything and making sure there's no errors. All right. Um, we're also going to have limited variety from small sellers. So for example, individual artisans on platforms like Etsy or eBay that are based in Canada, the UK, Europe, and other places, they have largely stopped shipping to the US because they can't afford the legal paperwork, right? And they can't afford the risk of their customers being hit with these unexpected $80 to $200 flat fees. Okay. So that's kind of a bummer because, it's been nice to get some things from other places that you couldn't get here. Right. So that's what we are looking at. Oh, and one other thing, high-end boutique items or unique international crafts that used to that would fall just under that $800 limit are now significantly more expensive and harder to find for all of the reasons that we have just talked about, right? So if you are a boutique yes, boutique owner, um, or some other store owner where your niche was you would have these products that could really be found here in the US, um, you're going to suffer a little bit, right? You're going to suffer a little bit because of the tariffs. All right. So, what is still working as it relates to these tariffs? Well, gifts are still working. You can still receive a gift from an individual from abroad duty free if it is worth less than $100. Okay, so the gift has to be worth less than $100. Okay, if it's less than $100, you can still receive it without paying an extra fee. Okay, when you're traveling, if you physically travel abroad and you bring items back in your suitcase, that $800 personal exemption still applies to you at the airport or at border crossing. So thank goodness for that. That is still a thing right now. Don't know if it will always be a thing, but it is still a thing right now. Okay. Now, I know some people are like, well, Tariffs, does this really matter? Yes, it matters. Okay. It absolutely matters that we're talking about this because at some point or another, you may have purchased something internationally. Maybe you travel internationally. And so you just want to be mindful going forward. Okay. Some people might decide, you know what, that everything I'll buy here now. I'm not even going to deal with international purchases and things like that. I'll just make sure that it's from right here in the good old US of A. And that's fine too if you want to do that. All right. Now, let's move on to our next topic, which is I want to talk about inflation. And I want to talk about the truth behind this 2.7% inflation headline that we have been hearing about. So, you may have been hearing that inflation is down to 2.7%, right? And that things are stabilizing. And like I said earlier, you're like, wow, it's interesting that they're saying things are stabilizing, but I feel like things are still tight on my end. I still feel like there's some pressure. I still feel like I don't feel like things are stabilizing, right? In my house, in my pockets, right? So here's the truth that most people are not told. The 2.7% number Okay, here we go. No, it was not your network. It's something it was on my end. My goodness. So where was I? I was talking about inflation. I was actually getting ready to wrap up that conversation. Gotta love technology, right? It's so cool. And then at the same time, it glitches, right? Usually at the wrong time. So okay, so I was saying that um we could see why they go with that narrative in terms of inflation, right? We can see why they say that 2.7 and go with that narrative. And because it sounds better, it's going to work come election time or in all of those things. But it is not the full truth because that 2.7 core inflation does not include things like food and grocery and all of that. And so they count on us not really understanding that, um, and just, we start to think that, "Oh, well, maybe I'm delusional or maybe I'm not doing something right in my household," which, I'm not negating it. That could be the case too, that we're not doing something right. But the full truth is, the core inflation number, the narrative that they are pushing doesn't include all of that. Okay? It does not include all of that. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about today is the jobs report. I don't talk about this very often. I think maybe once a year I'll say something on the jobs report, but it is something that we need to pay attention to. Okay. So, and whether you're like, well, I don't work a job, I don't work a 9 to 5, you still need to pay attention to it because I don't work a 9 to 5 either, but it still matters. And let's talk about why this matters. So, recent reports are showing slowing job growth, downward revisions, right, to previous months, and one of the weakest sustained hiring periods since the early 2000s. What is going on? Now, listen, I have had people tell me that um I have had people tell me that I see your question, Peter. I'll come back to it. So I've had people tell me that they have been looking for work and it has taken them a long time to get work, right? Like I had a friend that said it took them nearly almost all of 2025 to find a job. Okay. And not that they didn't do anything at all in 2025. They kind of, did some odd work here and there, picked up a contract here and there, but it took them nearly the entire year to find something permanent. I have other friends who are currently looking for work and they are having a hard time finding work. I have still yet other friends who are like, I'm not even really looking for something like full time 9 to 5. I'm just looking for something to supplement. Um, as my business grows, or for whatever reason, they're just looking for something part time or whatever, something that they can do, whether it's remote, whether it's in person. And people are having a hard time wherever, okay, in terms of picking up um, picking up work. So we're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that. Um, Give me just a second. So we're going to talk about that now. What is going on? Well, what's going on is that employers are being very cautious. Okay. They are being very cautious because their monies are, you know, the, listen, prices are going up for them too. Okay. So whatever products, services, and things that they are selling or whatever, it is costing them more to make that happen. Right. We have seen a lot of layoffs and things like that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But again, so employers are being cautious because there is some uncertainty. Now, you won't hear this much in the narrative, But there is still kind of some uncertainty. People are trying to see how things are going to work out as this administration continues to put in place the things that they are putting in place. Okay. And this discussion is not about, red or blue side or whatever, because I could care less. I care less about either side. If you knew me, if you know me, I don't give a hoot about either side because I think they're all in bed together. So it's just a matter of people are trying to understand this, money wise anyway, trying to understand this administration, the things that are being implemented and how it's affecting. So people are very, very cautious, right? So employers are not the only cautious ones, right? People are being cautious too. There, some people, most people are being more cautious with their money right now. And so that is the case for employers as well. Wage growth has slowed down, right? So, and that is not anything new. It has gotten gradually slower and slower and slower because, again, employers are very cautious. So they're you know not really trying to give out, the bonuses and all of these things. There used to be a time where you could expect almost every year what they would call, it's not a wage adjustment. Forgot exactly what it was called, what it's called. But what it was is that it would just adjust, to keep up with the cost of living. That's what it is. Cost of living adjustments, right? You could almost expect that every year. But now, um, that's not the case. You don't really see a lot of that. Okay. You don't really see a lot of that. Um, so wage growth is slowing down. Layoffs are becoming much more strategic, very strategic. Okay. Because um these places are they're looking at their dollars, right? They're looking at, and let me tell you all something. If a company needs to make cuts and they need to make huge cuts, the first place that that's going to happen is in salaries, in wages. That is the first place because typically one of the biggest expenses in any business is, that has employees, they're one of the biggest expenses is salaries and wages. Okay. So if a business needs to make some major adjustments, then that's likely the first place that they are looking. Okay. If they need to scale back in any way, shape, or form, that's largely the first place that they are looking. All right. Job security is becoming less predictable. I was talking about this to the participants in our 14-day fast. And it was just, we didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just remember telling them that, you know, it's hard to depend on a job these days. Again, in my parents' day, and they could find a job and they could be on that job for 30, 40 years or more, right? That's not the case now. That's not the case. Okay. You can't expect to be in any one place, beyond 10 10 years or so. Right. And if you do, man, that it's a rarity. It's not the norm. Okay. So, and that's because places are opening and they're closing and it doesn't even matter. Small business, big business, um, it doesn't matter. And even if it's a big business, let's say like a Kroger or something, well, they have to have those periods where they have to lay off, they have to close stores. I mean, not close all the stores, but they have to close some stores. They've got to lay off, right? And then when they feel like things are going well again, then they might do, expand again. But then when things, um, thinking of another word. Detract is not it, but that's the word that's coming to mind. But that's not the word that I'm thinking about. But anyway, it's this cycle, right? So the jobs report is signaling you know, tightening. Okay. This doesn't mean that there's some type of collapse that's on the edge, right? Or that's tomorrow or anything like that. But what it does signal is that things are tight. That's what it signals. And tightening economies expose weak financial foundations. That's what it exposes. The companies that go down during periods of times like this typically don't have a very strong financial foundation. I don't care if the company is very well known, okay, and has, if it's a store, if it has stores all over the place or whatever, and you see now they have to shut down all the stores and all that because they did not have a strong financial foundation. It's just like us in our personal finance. If something happens systemically, like it did in 2019, 2020, and we didn't have um, a good financial foundation, we suffered, right? People suffered, and um, companies suffered even at that time. So, and the ones who did not was because they had a very strong financial foundation in place, which includes things like, you know, having things set up for emergency, having a plan together if something should happen where the economy is tightening. Do you have a scale back plan? Okay, that allows you to thrive, right? So they just didn't have these things in place, and so they were exposed. All right. So this is another season where we're going to see um companies exposed, right? The ones who have good financial foundations will ride this thing out, right? With very minimal effect, but others that do not, they may not make it through this season. Okay. So that is what I wanted to mention about the jobs report. Now, I want to get back to Peter's question about what is actually included in the 2.7, the 2.7%. So remember, we're talking about the difference between the core inflation rate and like the general. So they report on the 2.7 core, and it really, what they include is a variety. It is a variety of goods and services, a variety of it, but it excludes food and energy. Okay. So almost anything else but food and energy. All right. Almost anything else but food and energy. So housing and shelter would be included. Apparel is included. Medical is included. Recreation is included. Transportation services is included. Education um, is included. Communication is included. Anything that you can think of, right? Any other goods and services, tobacco, whatever you can think of, all just whatever, all of that. But what is excluded in core inflation rates is food, okay, and that's both at home and away from home. So meaning, what you buy in the grocery store, or what you would spend if you go out to eat, and energy. Okay. And that means for energy, what that includes is like your gasoline, electricity, um, gas. So that's why I mentioned utilities earlier, because all of that is included in um, energy. Okay. Water, right? So that's what the core inflation rate excludes. And typically, when they are reporting the inflation rate, they are typically talking about the core inflation rate and not the inflation rate that includes food and energy. Okay. So I hope that that makes sense. Oh, this is the segment of the show where we talk about, as kingdom citizens, what is the perspective that we should have? How should we be? What steps should we be taking? What should we be thinking about? What should we be doing during this time? right? So scripture reminds us, write this down. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 3. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Prudent and simple. Okay. Prudent in this scripture means wise. Okay. Because in other places it can mean cheap and all other kinds of things. But in this particular scripture, it means wise. And in this scripture also, it says the simple, right? Pay the penalty. Simple means foolish. Okay. Those who are not using discernment, those who are not paying attention. Okay. Simple minded, right? Um, that's what this scripture is talking about. So it is very important for us that we are prudent, okay, in all seasons, especially this one. So as kingdom citizens, we don't panic. Okay. Again, when we seeing all these things, hearing all these things, we don't panic. People will call me or did you hear? Oh my gosh, they're cutting this? Did you see? Da, 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 and it's panic mode, right? No, we don't panic. What we do is we prepare. Okay. Yes, this announcement has been made. Some of these announcements, a lot of these announcements shouldn't be surprises because this administration talked about this on the campaign trail, right? So a lot of it is not surprise. We should have been preparing, right? And we still need to be preparing. We don't ignore the warning signs, right? So all these things that I've talked about today with um, tariffs and what we're seeing with tariffs, this is just the beginning, right? Let it be a warning sign. Okay. How jobs are going, let it be a warning sign, right? Um, all of these things, the core inflation rate, let it be a warning sign. Not so that again that we panic or we're in fear, but we interpret them wisely. The reason why they can get away with talking about the 2.7% um, core inflation rate is because we don't interpret wisely. We don't understand that there is a difference between the core inflation rate and the inflation rate. Okay. And also, as kingdom citizens, we have to remember that we don't rely on headlines. Okay. We rely on the source, which is Yah, and the discernment that we receive from Him and how to move in these seasons. All right. That is where we are in terms of money. We should never be panicked, fear, or any of that, because then that means that the money is what's in control and you're not in control. Okay. You are then subject to money, and money is the master. And we already know, right, what the word says that you cannot serve two masters. You can only serve one. All right. So, what does this mean for you and I practically in a tariff pressured, inflation masked, job tightening environment? Here's what it means 5 things, and then we're going to get out of here. 1, cash flow matters more than ever. Okay. You need to know where every dollar is going. We talked about this in our 14-day fast. Every dollar has to have an assignment. Every dollar has to have an assignment. Number 2, debt becomes heavier. Okay. Variable rates and rising costs equals less margin. This is the season where you need to be paying down your debt, specifically prioritizing the debt that has high interest rates. Okay. If you can't get it all paid down, target the ones that have the highest interest rates. Okay. Because that debt is only going to become heavier in this season. All right. Number 3, multiple income streams are not optional. I have been saying this for a long time. for many, many, many years. I think if you go back on my YouTube channel and watch for years and years, I've been saying that this is not optional, right? I know that everybody is not meant to run a full-fledged business, and that's not what I'm asking. What I am saying is that you must have multiple income streams, and income streams that don't require you to show up like your 9 to 5 requires you to show up. Because if every income stream requires you to show up, you're going to be limited. You're only going to be able to do two, right? But if you can have income streams that don't require you to show up, the more income streams you can have, because this is some protection. Okay, it's not 100% fail safe, but it is more protection, okay, than just one income stream where I have to show up consistently. All right. Number 4, investing has to be very strategic in this season. As investors, and I teach my students in my 90-day coaching experience, Financial Rebellion, I teach them that when we invest, that this is not about feelings and emotions, not at all. Okay. This is not hype driven. This is none of that. This is very strategic. Feelings out of it, very strategic moves, right? When you're investing. And you might think, well, I don't really know much about investing and da 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 da. Then learn. Okay. You don't have to become a guru. You don't have to become an expert. You don't have to go learn the trickiest stuff out there. Like people want to, oh, maybe I should learn trading, or maybe I should learn crypto, or maybe you don't have to go learn the trickiest stuff out there at all. Okay. I don't even recommend it for beginners. But learn how to invest maybe in mutual funds, in ETFs, in REITs, real estate investment trusts, things like that, right? Learn how to do that stuff and be very strategic. Delay any unnecessary spending in this season. All right. And I know we have our wants. Oh, but I just have wanted to move into a house. I've wanted, a new car. I want, right? Listen, you need to discern between your wants and what is wisdom. Between your wants and what is wisdom. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people in this time who can do that, but those are the people who have a strong financial foundation. If you are thinking about these things and you don't even have an emergency fund, set up that you are contributing to consistently, and you don't even have 3 months worth of expenses in it, because you really should have 6 to 9 months worth of expenses in it. This is not the season for you to be talking about getting a house and buying a new car and all these other big ticket items. This is a season for wisdom. Okay. So these things that I've shared with you, again, this is not about fear, but this is about foresight, having foresight. Okay. All right. So the world teaches we need to spend now before it gets worse. I talked about this last week. That's why they are, we see all this stuff in our taxes, that our taxes are going to be bigger this year. Oh, the people working in restaurants, no tips, and bigger child tax credits, and this and that and the other. Why are they doing that? Because they want us to go spend, spend, spend. But this is not the time for it, right? So the world is teaching us that we need to spend right now before it gets worse. But the kingdom says that we need to steward now so that we're not shaken later. Okay. Pressure reveals alignment. And so in this season, your money habits are either going to increase stress or increase stability. And you need to decide. Well, I ain't gonna tell you what you need to do, but decide. Do you want stress increased or do you want stability increased? And I know what everybody would choose, stability, right? Because of course, that's what sounds good, that's what it should be, but then our behavior money-wise will show something else. So make sure that your money behavior aligns with that choice. of increasing stability. All right. Now, if you want help navigating real world economic pressure with kingdom wisdom, then this is why I have a couple of things that exist. The first thing that exists is this book right here, Stop Begging God for Money. Okay. Now, this is my copy, which is you see the do not sell strip in there. This book exists for that reason. This book just received an International Impact Award. And I didn't do this. I didn't set out to win awards. It wasn't even my agenda. In fact, um, Elder Joan Randall, she helps people publish. She helps people self-publish and all of that. And so she helped me to self-publish. And she laughs at me because when the book hit bestseller, she called me and she was like, "Your book hit bestseller, yada yada." And I had just released a book, like so within a few hours it had done this. I was actually even online when she was calling me, and I was online saying, "Hey, buy the book, whatever." So I get off, return her call. She's like, your book hit bestseller." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It just released. I'm sure I gotta, get more people. I gotta go, promote this somewhere. I gotta go do whatever." And she laughed, right? Because I'm like, "Well, I ain't believe it," because that wasn't my goal. And then when I got this award the other day, that wasn't my goal either. And when I got it, I texted her and I sent it over to her and I said, "Is this a thing?" she's like, "This is huge." Right? Because again, I didn't set out for this kind of stuff. But I'm glad that, there are those in the world who recognize that. And I need you to recognize that. Okay. So this is not about me to my horn. This is about me getting a resource to you. Okay. That can help you in these times. So you can get the book at authorlexijohnson.com, authorlexijohnson.com. If you already have the book, get a copy and bless somebody else. Okay. Authorlexijohnson.com. Now, for those of you who are like, the book is great, but I actually need I need accountability, right? Because there are some people who can take this book, because this book is a guide. You actually have to do work. Okay. It's not just an inspirational read or nothing like that. Like it gives you the step by steps so you can do the work along the way. And that is good for people who, can work on their own. They don't need accountability. They're going to get it done. But then there are those of us who need accountability. I need someone to help because I know myself. I'm going to read the stuff. I'm not going to do the work. I'm just going to wish for it and all that kind of stuff. If that's you and you need accountability, you need somebody to walk with you, you can do this in community with me and the rest of those who have already joined us for cohort 3 of Financial Rebellion. We get started in March officially, but we actually already started. Okay. We just completed a 14-day fast to get prepared for what's coming next as far as the cohort. And there are still some things in between now and March that we're doing. So don't wait. Become part of it, right? This is not theory. It's not hype. This is a practical kingdom strategy for these uncertain times. And in Financial Rebellion, you're going to learn how to strengthen your cash flow. You're going to learn how to build resilience. You're going to learn how to invest strategically and wisely, like I was talking about today. You're going to learn how to lead your household financially instead of reacting emotionally, and so much more. Now, the doors are open. Last November or so, I put out a super early bird price. Maybe it was October. It's still that price. I have not been moved by the Holy Spirit to put it back to its regular price, which is $3,495. Okay. I have kept it at $249. Why? Because we are in a critical season. We're in a critical season, and I don't want anybody to have any excuses. And even on that $249, there are payment plans available. Okay. So you can go to bit.ly/join the rebellion 2026. Okay. We have 15 slots. Half of them are taken. So grab your slot. Okay. So that you can be one of the people who are prepared, one of the people who will have a strong foundation, one of the prudent, not one of the simple minded. Okay. All right. Well, once again, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this, please make sure that you like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook or somewhere else, hey, share this out, okay? Hit the heart button, share this out, tag somebody in it so that they also can learn and be exposed to these conversations because it really is time for Yah's kingdom citizens to be financially equipped. Because trust me, where we're going, we are going to need to be financially equipped. Okay. A lot of other things that are happening in government right now, and certain people getting office and all that kind of stuff because they financially equipped. And we are not. Okay. So we need to get financially equipped so that we can um, expand the kingdom, so that we can produce, so that we can multiply, so that we can dominate. All right. God bless. We'll see you next time.